Let's continue in our introduction to the book of Genesis. As far as origin, meaning, morality, and destiny, each worldview should give an account for these four items: origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Gottfried Leibniz of Germany raised the question, why is there something rather than nothing at all? And he came up with a principle known as principle of sufficient reason. And the principle of sufficient reason, in a nutshell, says that everything that exists needs a sufficient reason for its existence. That was Leibniz. And I used to believe that, except for God. He doesn't need a sufficient reason for his existence. He is the pure I amness. He just is pure isness. He just is the Alpha and the Omega, without beginning, without an end. He's sort of like actual infinitude, if you will. But when you look at pantheism, polytheism, atheism, naturalism, and the various other isms out there, like deism and dualism, how well do they answer origin, meaning, morality, and destiny? So when we get a little further into our study, when we get to Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, we'll look at some of the arguments for the existence of God as well. But to just say, as far as origin goes, we've always been here, or that the universe is eternal. We came from microbiological evolutionary means, from basically non-intelligence to intelligence. Now you have effects being greater than their cause or causes, etc. So we want to keep an eye on how other worldviews answer that. This is not a class on worldviews. We're not going to get into too much of respective world religions, if you will. But, why are we here? Where are we going? So origin, secondly, is the meaning of life. What's the meaning of life? If atheism is true, life is utterly absurd. It's like William Lane Craig put it this way. If there's no God, then there's no objective meaning to our existence. You could say maybe there's a relative significance, but ultimately we are on death row, soon to be annihilated, and there's no real difference between you and I and a barnyard of pigs or a swarm of mosquitoes, so to speak. We're just the accidental byproduct of Mother Nature, who vomited us into existence and will one day swallow us once more, and we might go on living as an idea in other minds, but soon that too shall pass. So what is the meaning of life? Jean-Paul Sartre said there is no meaning. But of course he meant that, but only in a relative way. What about morality? Where does rightness and wrongness come from? Is there an objective standard of right and wrong, or is it just moral relativism? If moral relativism is true, which follows from atheism, then to say this is right and this is wrong really aims at survival of the human species. It doesn't follow that it's objectively wrong to torture, say, a 2-year-old for the mere fun of it. You would only say it's wrong because it hurts or it's not socially advantageous for the human species. But objectively, is it absolutely wrong at all, for everyone, at all times, at all places, etc.? That would be morality. So you have two main systems there: moral objectivism and you have moral relativism. And of course, moral objectivism would follow from theism, and there are various types of absolutism or objectivism under Christian theism. For example, there's unqualified absolutism, there's graded absolutism, and then there's conflicting absolutism. Good book on the subject is Christian Ethics by Norman Geisler. He develops each one of those and gives arguments for and against. And then finally, destiny. Where are we going? What's the point? Is there hope for immortality, etc.? So just in a nutshell, origin, meaning, morality, and destiny, those four items, the system of thought, the philosophy of religion that answers those the best is where we ought to place our faith. And in Genesis, we see the Judaic Christian answer to many of these things. Thus, the Christian worldview for those who believe in the New Testament. Now, as far as the Ten Commandments are concerned, in Exodus 20, you have the Ten Commandments, and the first 5 are between God and man, and then the other 5 are between man and man. So, for example, the first set of tablets, the first tablet, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's between God and man. Second commandment, you shall not make for yourself a carved image. Again, between God and man. Number 3, you shall not take the Lord your God in vain. And then 4, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 5, honor your father and your mother. And then between man and man, you have 6, you should not murder. 7, you should not commit adultery. 8, you should not steal. 9, you should not bear false witness against your neighbor. And then finally, 10, you should not covet. These slides will be uploaded in Populi as well, so make sure you look into them next week. Now, what do we know about the history and language, style, geography, culture, and interpretations surrounding the book of Genesis? Why are these things critical? In Populi, you will see a YouTube video uploaded that answers some of those questions that I just raised. But having said that, we will get into a brief survey of Genesis, a book of origin, God's communication with man, and it's filled with the miraculous. And you also have a YouTube video to watch there. Now, why is this book so important? It is the book of theism, the book of Judaic theism, and then, of course, as the New Testament came along and Jesus fulfilled the messianic requirements in the Tanakh, we have now the Judeo-Christian worldview, or Judeo-Christian theism. And this is important because it affects the entirety of the rest of the Bible. So theology and biblical studies are grounded, if you will, in the origin of this book. According to Daniel Wallace, professor of New Testament studies at Dallas Theological Seminary, he says, those in ministry must close the gap between the church and the academy. We have to educate believers. Instead of trying to isolate lay people from critical scholarship, they need to be ready for the barrage, because it is coming. The intentional dumbing down of the church for the sake of filling more pews will ultimately lead to defection from Christ. So having said that, in our next session, I will get into what's called prolegomena, what we do before theology. And again, I'll upload some other notes in relation to prolegomena, but it's sort of the foundation for doing theology, where we deal with our philosophical assumptions and so forth. So stay tuned, and we'll pick it up in our next session. Lord bless.